The Philadelphia Eagles didn't just make headlines this week, they sent a message, and it was aimed directly at Jalen Hurts. Multiple reports, perfect timing, insider leaks. This wasn't random. Something is shifting behind the scenes, and it could change everything for their franchise quarterback. But the real reason behind these leaks is where things get serious. The timing of all this isn't just interesting, it's revealing. Because everything started surfacing during the NFL's most important off-field event, the league meetings. That's where every key decision maker for the Philadelphia Eagles is in one place. Coaches, general managers, owners, and just as importantly, media insiders. That matters. Because when reports about Jalen Hurts suddenly drop right at that moment, it's almost impossible to believe it's a coincidence. These aren't random rumors from unknown sources. These are detailed reports coming from highly respected journalists like Tim McManus and Jeff McLane, guys who have covered this team for years and don't just throw things out for attention. And here's the key detail most people are missing. These reports didn't just cite sources close to the team. They referenced multiple voices inside the organization. That changes everything. Because when information like this comes from within the building, it usually means one of two things. Either something is seriously wrong or someone wants this information out there. And the more you look at it, the more it feels like the second option. Because think about the message being sent. The reports don't attack Hurts personally. They don't question his leadership or character. In fact, they acknowledge his success, his professionalism, and everything he's accomplished. But at the same time, they subtly highlight concerns, the passing game struggles, the tension with coaching, the need for improvement. It's not random criticism. It's targeted. It's controlled. It's almost like the organization is applying pressure without ever saying it directly. And in the NFL, that kind of messaging is rarely accidental. Teams don't leak information like this unless there's a purpose behind it. Whether it's to create accountability, spark urgency, or push a player to another level, there's always an angle. And in this case, all signs point toward the Eagles trying to send a very clear signal to their quarterback. Not through a meeting, not behind closed doors, but publicly. Which raises a bigger question. If this was intentional, what exactly are they trying to get out of him? And the answer to that might reveal how the Eagles truly feel about their franchise quarterback. On the surface, everything looks fine with Jalen Hurts. Winning seasons, deep playoff runs, even a Super Bowl MVP. For most quarterbacks, that resume would silence any criticism. And for a while, it did. Hurts wasn't just seen as the future of the Philadelphia Eagles, he was the standard. But lately, the conversation has started to shift. Because behind all the success, there's been a growing frustration that hasn't fully gone away. It starts with the passing game. Over the last 2 seasons, there have been stretches where the Eagles' offense just didn't look right through the air. Timing felt off, reads looked hesitant. And despite having one of the most talented supporting casts in the league, the production hasn't always matched expectations. It's not that Hurts has been bad, it's that he hasn't consistently played at that elite level people expect from a franchise quarterback. And that's where things get uncomfortable. Because according to reports, some of that frustration isn't just about performance, it's about how things are being handled behind the scenes. There were moments, especially last season, where tension reportedly built between Hurts and the coaching staff, including Kellen Moore. The issue? Philosophical differences, play calling disagreements, a disconnect in how the offense should operate. Now, to be clear, this isn't uncommon in the NFL. Quarterbacks want control. Coaches want structure. That push and pull happens everywhere. But here's the difference. When everything is clicking, those disagreements get overlooked. When it's not, they become a problem. And that's what makes this situation so interesting. Because the Eagles aren't questioning who Hurts is as a leader. They're not questioning his work ethic. In fact, by all accounts, he's respected inside that locker room. But at the same time, there's a growing sense that something isn't fully aligned, that the offense hasn't reached its true ceiling yet. And in a league where expectations are sky high, almost isn't good enough. Which is why this frustration, even if it's subtle, is starting to matter more than ever. And if that tension keeps building, it could lead to a much bigger decision than anyone expected. Behind all the headlines and reports, this situation really comes down to one thing: control. Because what's quietly developing inside the Philadelphia Eagles organization isn't just frustration, it's a potential clash of philosophies, and at the center of it is Jalen Hurts. According to multiple reports, there were moments last season where Hurts didn't fully see eye to eye with the coaching staff, especially when it came to how the offense should be run. That includes reported tension with former play caller Kellen Moore, where disagreements weren't just minor adjustments, they were about direction. What kind of offense should this be? How aggressive should they be through the air? How much freedom should the quarterback have at the line? These aren't small questions, these define an entire system. And now things are changing again. The Eagles are heading into a new season with a reworked offensive structure, new voices, new ideas, and potentially a completely different scheme. That means timing will change, reads will change, responsibilities will change. It's not just a tweak, it's a reset. And here's the reality. For this to work, Hurts has to fully buy in. No hesitation, no resistance, no trying to bend the system back to what's comfortable. Because from the organization's perspective, this is about evolution. They believe this offense can reach another level, but only if everyone is aligned. Coaches want execution, structure, precision, and if there were moments in the past where that alignment wasn't perfect, they're clearly trying to correct it now. That's where the pressure comes in. Because if Hurts embraces the changes, adapts, and elevates his game within this new system, everything works. The offense improves, the noise disappears, and he solidifies himself as the unquestioned future of the franchise. But if that disconnect continues, then it's no longer just about scheme. It becomes about fit. And in the NFL, when a quarterback and a system don't fully align, teams don't wait forever to fix it. And if that alignment doesn't happen soon, the Eagles might be forced to consider something drastic. While the headlines focus on performance and coaching tension, there's another layer to this situation that might be even more important: the money. Because when you look closely at Jalen Hurts' contract with the Philadelphia Eagles, the timeline tells you everything you need to know. 2026 is the final year where his deal is fully guaranteed. And in the NFL, that's not just a detail, it's leverage. For Hurts, it means security, at least for now, but for the Eagles, it creates a decision point, a deadline, a moment where they have to decide whether to fully commit long-term or start thinking about other options. What makes this even more interesting is what hasn't happened. Normally, when a team believes 100% in their franchise quarterback, they don't wait. They restructure deals, they extend contracts early, they push money down the road to create cap flexibility and show commitment. But according to reports, and even comments from owner Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles have no plans to extend Hurts right now. That silence is loud. Because it suggests one thing: they're not fully ready to commit just yet. It doesn't mean they've lost faith, it doesn't mean they're moving on, but it does mean they want to see more consistency, more growth in the passing game, more alignment with the coaching staff. In other words, proof. And that shifts the pressure directly onto Hurts. If he plays at an elite level in 2026, this conversation disappears overnight. He gets the extension, he remains the face of the franchise, everything moves forward. But if he does, now the Eagles have options. They're not locked in long-term, they're not financially trapped. And in a league where quarterback movement happens faster than ever, that flexibility is extremely valuable. Which is why this contract situation isn't just background noise. It's the foundation of everything. Because for the Eagles, this isn't just about evaluating a player. It's about deciding whether he's worth building the future around. And if he doesn't prove it in time, that future could look very different very fast. Everything now points to one unavoidable reality for Jalen Hurts. 2026 isn't just another season, it's a defining moment. Because for the Philadelphia Eagles, the situation is crystal clear. They've seen the highs, they've seen the flashes of elite play. They've watched Hurts lead deep playoff runs, compete on the biggest stage, and prove he can be that guy. But now they need to see it consistently, no excuses, no inconsistencies, no questions. This is the evaluation year. If Hurts delivers, if the passing game improves, if the new offensive system clicks, if he fully buys into the coaching, then everything falls into place. He secures his future. The Eagles double down. A new contract likely follows, and he remains the face of the franchise for years to come. But if he does, that's where things take a sharp turn. Because the NFL doesn't wait. It doesn't care about what you did 2 years ago. It cares about what you're doing right now. And history has shown that the Eagles are not afraid to make bold moves. This is the same organization that moved on from Carson Wentz not long after a near MVP season. The same team that won a Super Bowl and still made major changes shortly after. Nothing is guaranteed. And with reports already hinting at internal pressure, coaching adjustments, and contract hesitation, the stakes couldn't be higher. Hurts isn't just playing to win games, he's playing to prove he's still the long-term answer. What makes it even more intense is what could be waiting on the other side. There are already early whispers that upcoming draft classes could be loaded with quarterback talent. If that becomes reality, the Eagles would have options, real options, and if they feel even a slight doubt, they could pivot faster than anyone expects. That's the reality of this league. You're either the guys or you're being evaluated against the next one. And right now, Hurts is right in the middle of that line. And if he doesn't take that next step, the Eagles might already have a backup plan in mind. Even with all the pressure, all the reports, and all the questions, there's one thing that hasn't changed about Jalen Hurts: the respect he commands inside the Philadelphia Eagles locker room. By every account, Hurts is the kind of player organizations dream of. Calm under pressure, disciplined, focused, a true professional. He doesn't create headlines off the field. He doesn't bring distractions. Teammates trust him. Coaches have praised his work ethic for years. In a city like Philadelphia, where intensity is everything, his temperament has always fit perfectly. And that matters. Because leadership isn't something you can just replace overnight. It's built over time. It's earned through consistency, accountability, and presence. And Hurts has checked those boxes since the moment he became the starter. But here where things start to shift. In the NFL, leadership alone isn't enough. At some point, production has to match the expectations that come with it. And when you're leading a roster this talented with weapons across the board and a team built to compete at the highest level, the standard rises even higher. Being good isn't the goal, being great consistently is. That's the tension the Eagles are dealing with right now. They have a quarterback who checks every intangible box. A leader, a professional, a face of the franchise. But at the same time, there's a growing sense that the on-field performance, especially in the passing game, hasn't fully matched the ceiling this team believes it has. And when those two things don't perfectly align, questions start to form. Not about who he is as a person, but about whether he can take that next step as a player. Because inside that locker room, belief is still there, teammates still rally around him, the culture hasn't fractured, but the expectations, they've evolved. This team isn't trying to be competitive anymore. They're trying to dominate. And that means the bar keeps moving. Which puts Hurts in a unique position, respected, trusted, and supported, but also quietly challenged to elevate everything just a little bit more. And if that gap between leadership and performance doesn't close soon, it could force a decision no one wants to make. At this point, the picture is starting to come into focus, and it's a lot more calculated than it first seemed. Because what the Philadelphia Eagles are doing right now isn't random criticism, and it's not internal chaos either. It's strategy. A deliberate, controlled way of pushing Jalen Hurts to reach a level they believe he's capable of but hasn't consistently shown yet. Think about it. The timing of the reports, the credibility of the insiders. The fact that multiple voices inside the organization are aligned in what's being said. This isn't a leak that slipped out, it's a message that was allowed to be heard. And that message is simple. We believe in you, but it's time to prove it again. Not just with flashes, not just in big moments, but week after week, game after game, especially in the areas that have been under scrutiny, the passing game, the decision-making, and the ability to fully command a modern NFL offense. Because from the Eagles' perspective, they're not rebuilding. They're refining. This is a roster built to win now. The talent is there. The expectations are high. And when you're this close to being a complete team, the smallest gaps become the biggest focus. For them, Hurts isn't the problem, but he might be the final piece that determines whether they reach another level or stay just short. That's why this pressure feels different. It's not about replacing him, at least not yet. It's about testing him, pushing him out of his comfort zone, forcing growth, creating urgency without directly confronting it behind closed doors. And in the NFL, this kind of public pressure can either elevate a player or expose limitations. So now everything comes down to how Hurts responds. Because if he rises to the moment, adapts to the changes, and delivers at an elite level, this entire narrative flips. He secures his future. The Eagles double down, and this becomes the turning point that took him from great to undeniable. But if he does, then this message might not just be motivation. It might be preparation. Preparation for a future where the Eagles start thinking about what comes next. So are the Eagles pushing their franchise quarterback to greatness, or quietly preparing for life after him?